Hello and welcome to the first episode of the Geeky Deacons. Just kidding.
That's right.
But it should be.
Should be.
So I came in underdressed, and then Father Deacon Seraphim over here came in overdressed. So I decided.
Well, it's one of those things. I still don't know the rules, so
Yes, but you have the better beard, so I couldn't be outshone in every single aspect of Russianness because I don't have a beard. Too much Mongol in my blood. What can I do?
Ooh. There's a funny thing is that people at my parish, many people at my parish have been convinced for many years that I'm Russian.
Well, yeah.
Sure. So we get invited to the Russian New Year's parties and so on and so forth. And it's for several reasons. One is that my last name is actually not an uncommon last name in Russia.
Okay.
Yeah, it's usually, it'd be like Roklid or something like that, but it's
it's a Russian German name.
Yeah, it's a Russian.
Among the Russian Germans, it's a common name.
Yeah, it's a Russian German name, and we just have a family that has a certain vibe, I guess. And also, when I often look unhappy, and I'm not unhappy. I just look unhappy.
I don't believe you. I think that last part you just made up.
Yeah. So Warhammer, man.
Yes, Warhammer. Let's set this up first, right? So
yeah, what are we doing? What's the goal here?
So the goal here is get all deep in theological and make it okay for people to talk about it a lot more loudly than in whispers.
Okay.
Outside of the closed confines of people who actually play the stuff and read the books and
so on and so forth.
Right. So this all started, for those who don't know, in our conversation about Dune, when we had a 15-20 minute long pre-conversation that some people were privy to and some people were not, I think. And we didn't actually record that bit, but it was exciting. And then you told me that we should get back together after I read The Flight of the Eisenstein, because I told you that I'm reading Horus Heresy at the instigation of one of the people here, my good friend Evan Lilitov, who I'm sure will have plenty to say in the Q&A. So I, for context, I have been fighting off Evan Lilitov, who's a good friend, for many years. He's been trying to get me to get into Warhammer 40k from the aesthetics side, the storytelling richness side, and just the general world building awesomeness side of Warhammer 40k. And so much of what you see out there is quite dark, right? I mean, the iconography, as it were, is without context, especially for somebody as gentle as yours truly, who
oh yes,
be careful about what my eyes see. So I was like, this is, man, I don't know, like big guys in huge bulky armor with like ugly faces and all this weird pseudo Catholic but really kind of maybe demonic stuff. I'm like, I don't know, I can't, this is not good. This is bad for my soul, right? So he kept pushing me, and he would ply me with food and drink. This friend of mine. And eventually he understood that the only way you're going to do this is if you're going to actually get me the books to read them. And we started incorrectly. He asked me, who's a writer that you like? Maybe he's done some Warhammer stuff. So I'm like, well, I like Adrian Tchaikovsky, and he's done a Warhammer novel. So why don't you get me that novel? So Adrian Tchaikovsky has a Warhammer novel. I don't think it's even here anymore because it's so terrible. I read one page and I'm like, this really stinks. I don't like, this is terrible. Because it's just not a very good Warhammer novel.
Do you remember which book that was?
No. And it doesn't matter because it's not good. Then he sent me Dan Abnett's Eisenstein trilogy, or the first one, Day of Ascension. Yeah.
Day of Ascension. Okay.
Yeah. He sent me Dan Abnett's first book in the Eisenstein thing, and I'm like, oh, this is really well written.
Oh yeah, I mean Eisenstein is
Yes, it's the classic. So he wizened up or woes up to the proper way of getting me into the thing. Which
I like wozened. I like wozened. Yeah, it seems right to me.
It sounds German.
I'm a philologist, so I can just make up whatever I want.
The philologist said so. So I actually didn't end up finishing Eisenstein, but I liked the first one. I thought, okay, this is great. I'm kind of happy with it. And then he's like, no, wait a minute. Horus Heresy. Like that's the thing. Like I need to get like you need to read Horus Heresy. So he sent me the audiobook for book one, and I was like, wait a minute.
Yeah, 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 yeah.
This is good. This is really good. It's deep. It's really well written. And then I kept reading, and I couldn't stop. So we've gotten to book four, and at the end of book four, which we'll get to, I think, when we get the scene of the warrior and the what is it, the warrior and the saint praying together. I'm like, wait a minute, this is really deep. And then we had long, extended conversations about the world and about the world building and about the theology of it all. And then there was a great episode in the Doxacast remix or something. I can never remember the name of that podcast, where a guy named I think Sam Cooke came on and talked about Warhammer 40k from a kind of Christian
Oh,
perspective.
interesting.
Yeah, and I didn't like about 90% of what he said, and I'm like, no, we have to have the real one, and we have to
Okay,
work all
fair
this
enough.
out because he put it in too much into the context of the Lord of Spirits, as it seems like every able-bodied young man is doing these days. So I want to I want to give it its proper airing, and I want to give it some space to exist outside of the Lord of Spirits. So um, that's how I got into Warhammer 40k, and
Okay.
you explain to the lovely people what your entry point is and how you relate to the whole thing.
I mean, so w- uh, uh, 40K has always kind of been there in the background um, of being just like being a nerd, being the sort of person who goes to game stores a lot.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I go to game stores, it's kind of my, uh, I had a really long month, like, yeah, I'll pop down to the game store and maybe we'll get a new board game to try out with the kids or something like that. I'm that kind of person.
Yeah.
Like I like trying out new games. I really like war games. I really like strategy games.
Mm-hmm.
When I was a kid, I was never
Stratego? Are
playing
you a
like
Stratego guy?
sure, I mean Stratego, Risk, Axis and Allies, but also stuff like way more esoteric than that.
Okay.
There there's this company which I'm spacing out on the name. They still make games in Avalon Hill. Um, and they would put out these hyper specialized games that would be like here's one extremely like here's a board game and the production values are crap. It's just a bunch of cardboard chits and a really big map, but this will let you play out every single hour of this one particular battle from World War One, right?
Mm-hmm.
So that's the kind of thing that I am into.
Okay.
And so, I mean, I also love like other games, Euro games, engine builder games, things like that. So I've just always been, I like board games, I like strategy games. When I was a kid, I would play video games. I never played like, first person shooters. I mean, I did play them, but I was just bad at them. I like things where I have an army and I have all my soldiers and I can move them around and they go places and do things for me, right? I'm that, that kind of a person. So I've been interested in wargaming for a long time and originally started getting into historical wargaming a few years ago.
Mm-hmm.
And that was because I'm a history guy. I really like history, and it's got like a much lower sort of entry point, price wise than some other things do. But the thing is that if you want to play with people, I mean, I really tried to get everyone just be like, all right, listen, I'll do the Gauls and you can do the Romans, and just like. But if you want to play with people, it seems like Warhammer is kind of the thing.
Yeah.
And so I've been sort of aware of it. I've been reading the lore. Like, so it is funny because there are people out there who are just lore, no tabletop.
Yeah.
And that was me for a
That's
very
me.
long, that was me for a very long time. And then one day I'm in the store and the local guys who run the store near my house. I mean, I know them super well. They have my number, literally and figuratively. And there was a starter set, and the guy was like, "Hey, so." I'd give you like a really big discount on this if you wanted it. And I was like, well, I guess I'm a Warhammer player now. And so,
So the
um,
commonality here is that there's a gateway drug here, and it's always somebody else that gets
yes,
the thing, and then you
yeah,
can't get
that's
out.
exactly it. I mean, I will say I actually did play some Warhammer Fantasy many years ago. I even tried Age of Sigmar, which I didn't really care for. But in any case, I think there's something about 40K in particular. The way that I would kind of characterize it, and a way my friend and I like to talk about it, is to say that um, when you walk into the Warhammer store, the first faction that catches your eye is your personality. And so whenever I take a new person, now by telling you this, I've spoiled it. So you have to forget about this.
Yes.
So that someday when you and I are together, I will take you into a Warhammer store and your eyes will light upon a box. And that box will be like something in you, the 6-year-old kid inside of you will say, "This is me. This is who I am. This is the truth about me."
Okay.
So
October in Dallas.
October, yeah. Are you coming to Dallas in October?
Yeah. Cersei Regional Conference. I'm speaking.
Oh, this year.
Yeah.
Great. I'll be there. I might be speaking, but even if I'm not speaking, I will be there. So we'll plan on it. We'll plan on it. Jonathan Pajot might be speaking too. That would be, yeah. So actually, last year when Jonathan was down, I took him to the Warhammer store.
Okay, there you go. Now it's gonna be a yearly pilgrimage.
Walked him inside. Is no context for what Warhammer is.
No.
and like no context. Like doesn't know anything about it. Just walked him inside. It was like, hey, what looks cool? And his eyes, he's kind of looking around. He's like,
this is interesting.
Nice. And then his eyes finally lit upon one particular box for one particular faction. And I was like, yeah, that makes sense about you.
Okay.
So,
what was it? And will I understand?
I don't know. I mean, I feel like this is a juicy tidbit that,
I see.
But where else though than this conversation will I ever share this? So
exactly, guys,
he landed on
getting this. This is incredible. This is like
here we go.
Stuff.
I've never shared this. I've teased this on Twitter, but I have never actually told I've never told the story. His eyes landed on the Imperial Knights boxes.
Okay, now
which are the big. Okay, so the Imperial Knights. Imperial Knights in the Warhammer 40k universe are like big mechs, but like sort of very chivalric looking mechs. They're actually, I'm working on an Imperial Knights project, like in epic scale right now, but I will talk about that later. Anyway, and basically the idea is that originally these are like large mechs that were built for like maybe agricultural purposes when people were founding new planets, and then they had to add weapons onto them because there was like predatory fauna on said planets. And then basically eventually the knight houses developed into this sort of landed aristocracy with their power centered around these large mechs, which are hundreds, often thousands of years old, and which are passed on from generation to generation. And the whole thing with the way that the machine works is that when you sit inside of it, it's got a neural link kind of a setup, but it has ghost imprints, you could say, of all the previous people who have piloted the machine. And like the longer they piloted it, the stronger their imprint is.
Cool.
And all of those things have like a neural imprint on the machine spirit. And so what this means is that when you get in the mech, you have all the voices of your ancestors around you.
That's
and actually,
oh my gosh,
there is I know. He didn't know any of this. He just looked at it and said,
this
and
is weird.
The fun thing, listen, it's basically never been wrong. So
now you've told me, so I have to wipe my
now I've told you, so it's okay. By October, you'll forget.
Okay.
But one of the cool things, let me just finish saying this about the Knights. One of the cool things is that the way that it works, if you read some of the Knights novels, and there's one or two that are pretty good that I would recommend. If you read the Knights novels, you'll see that they have like a bonding ritual that they do whenever they're installing a new pilot. And there's a chance that the ancestors will reject you because they think your line is not pure enough, or they think you're not, like, your heart's not really in it, they could just like refuse to let you pilot the mech. It could also fry your brain, or it could do a bunch of other bad, or kill you, all these different things. And so anyway, the Imperial Knights are a super cool kind of a faction, but that's where his eyes landed, which I thought was super, super interesting. So yeah, I mean, for me, like,
everyone, in October you might get into a Warhammer store and choosing.
I feel like we should vlog that or something.
Right?
I think that would be fun.
I think we might have to.
Fun. Yeah. Okay, so so I started playing, and I got a couple of friends into it, and I'm a sort of, let's say I'm an enthusiasm vector. It's my main societal role, which I fill.
Yes.
And so a bunch of my friends, like church friends and so on, started playing as well. So we've got, probably about 8 guys, some more dedicated than others, but we have a pretty big group.
Mm.
And everybody, everybody's Orthodox, and we play Warhammer. And tonight, so I have a barn here on the property, and I just have a table set up in there with terrain and stuff, so people can come and use it.
Fun.
And even if I'm not playing. And so tonight, after this call is done, we're having some people come over. We're going to pray an Atheist, and then we're going to have book club. But then also some people are coming early just to use the shop. Like while I'm making this Warhammer podcast, there are people in my barn playing Warhammer. So it's just kind of like within the last couple of years, it's become like a bigger thing in our life, in my life. And part of it is because my approach to wargaming is that wargaming is role-playing, and actually also role-playing is wargaming. And so what this means is that I don't want to just like, here, I'll bring 1,000 points, you bring 1,000 points, and we'll just have a battle with no narrative. Like, who cares about that? Like, that's why I'm not interested in like the competitive tournament scene of Warhammer. It's just got no draw to me at all. What I'm interested in is having a story where none of the people involved actually control the outcome. So it's kind of like an RPG, but on this kind of massive scale. So all the RPGs that I run always end up having a big wargaming component.
Mm-hmm.
My One Ring RPG game that I ran for 7 years, which was set in the years between The Hobbit and Lord of the Rings, ended up having 2 or 3 actual wars going on, and so we had like pitch battle scenes, and anyway, it was great. It's even better if you can do that with miniatures. And so so what we're doing right now, so starting January 1st of this year, we started a new campaign called the Quest for the Sangreal. And it is the basic premise is that there's so it is set in the 41st millennium, so 11,000 years after the Horus Heresy. But the premise is that there is a subsector of space called the Sangreal subsector, which has been cut off via a warp storm from the rest of the Imperium for approximately 5,000 years.
Ooh, fun.
Which means the whole thing is terra incognito. You have like a little bit of information from like old corrupted records, but nobody actually knows what's in there. And then it had everybody pick a faction, and then randomly roll for a starting location on the edge of the sector. So it's like a 10 by 8 hex map, something like that. And so everybody randomly rolls for a starting location. And then you have a fleet of ships, and I made up rules for the ships fighting. So you have a fleet of ships, and each week you send me your orders, and I move your ships around the hex. And then you'll move into a hex and be like, you discovered a planet, or you discovered a hostile enemy fleet, or something like this.
Yeah.
And then also, the only way for the players to communicate with each other directly is to get one of their ships in the same hex as another player's.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
Otherwise, they have to send astropathic messages through the warp, which are unpredictable. And so I have some software that I wrote where I take whenever somebody sends me a message and they're like, I want to send a message to the Sisters of Battle, and I will put their message in the software, and then it has a time delay.
Yeah.
And so it'll spit it out when it's actually time to go to the Sisters of Battle.
That's so cool.
And so I also have a piece of software that I wrote to manage the movement of the ships around because eventually it just became too much for me to like manually do it. So there's that. And then we're using another rule set called Grimdark Firefight, which is used with the same miniatures, but it's like a squad level kind of a thing, as opposed to like a full army.
Mm-hmm.
And so everybody has an elite strike force that they can send to do missions for them.
Mm-hmm.
And then obviously you have your big armies. And so the way that it works is you move your stuff around, you start investigating, you start exploring. Eventually they start to build maps. Eventually they start to share their maps of the subsector with each other.
Yeah.
Right. And then they figure out, oh no, there's Tyranids coming in right here. We got to go do something about that. And so they say, all right, let's load our guys up on our ships, and we try to make it through the warp. And there are warp storms, so sometimes travel is a little unpredictable. But you get to the planet, and then we say, all right, now let's schedule a game and fight it out. And based on the results, I do usually try to do, when I had a little more time. My time it's been a little difficult lately because I've been working too much. So we're about to take a little break over the summer and then pick up again in September. But the uh, uh, usually after a battle, I will write up like a narrative scene, like 1 or 2 thousand words. That'll just be like, here's actual, basically like our own private Warhammer fiction. So,
It's really cool. So, so
so
how much lore do they need to know when they're entering this stuff, and how much
yeah,
are
I
you
mean,
making up, and what are you basing it on?
so I made up all of the lore for the subsector myself. There
Okay.
are some things that are based on others' existing stuff in the lore. Um, some of my players might eventually watch this, so I don't want to give too much
Okay.
away.
Okay. Okay. Fair enough.
Um, but I mean, basically, you have sort of your big concepts that you would expect to have. There are some ideas. There's one particular faction I really like in the Horus Heresy novels that's introduced in the novel Legion, which is really good.
Okay.
Um, but that's the introductory Alpha Legion book. But since the Alpha Legion are basically like, spies, but Space Marine kind of things,
Yeah.
the Legion is basically is like an espionage story, which is my
Oh,
favorite
fun.
genre of fiction. So,
Yep.
um, so anyway, it's a very kind of Wilderness of Mirrors, John le Carre in space kind of a
Cool.
thing. Yeah. So I like that book, and there's a faction introduced in that book which inspired a lot of what I'm doing in this crusade. So I came up with all the lore. There are about 20 something planets. So
Mm.
there's this old RPG called Traveler, which is like a space opera, space travel exploration, or you could just be like a space merchant if you wanted to. Anyway, it's called Traveler, and it has great rules for like randomly rolling up planets.
Hmm.
So I randomly generated about 20 something odd planets and seeded them throughout the thing. And then basically, the cool thing is that there were certain fixed points that are all related to each other through this ritual that the players are currently trying to uncover. And so I actually developed lore for those worlds, and everything else is terra incognita to me as well,
Oh, fun.
until the players roll up, and then I have some roll tables that I roll on to find out what kind of government does the planet have, who's here, how are they, what faction is here, and so and the fun is that this has some really fun emergent storytelling
Hmm.
to it because so for instance, there's this one world, players roll up, I consult the roll table, and it comes back. This is a newly awakening Necron tomb world. I'm like, oh, okay, great. There's Necrons here. And then they kind of move a couple of hexes over to the next planet, kind of in this long stellar mass, and it's another Necron tomb world. And then 2 or 3 hexes away, there ends up being another Necron tomb world. So at this point, this isn't just these aren't just random encounters. There is an old Necron empire here that is just beginning to awaken as the players have come back into things. And so then I reach out to my one of my players who is his main faction right now is Inquisition, but he's the one that has like 4 or 5 thousand points of Necrons. And I
Hmm.
said, listen, so there's all these Necrons going on. Here's a bunch of lore I developed for them. And so now, if anybody shows up to fight the Necrons, I just say, hey, Paul, you need to schedule a battle. And so I still role play for the faction, but he's actually doing the army. And that's what we've been doing for. Otherwise, it would just be too much for me to do. And so initially, it was supposed to be all of these imperial factions,
Hmm.
and something has happened. Uh, Something has happened in the Crusades. So there is a player who is playing a Blood Angels successor chapter, and he discovered the relic known as the Sangreal, which obviously is very pivotal to the Crusade, as the name would imply. And there was this Blood Angel successor chapter there called the Sangreal Knights, who have been disconnected from the Imperium for 5,000 years,
Hmm. Cool.
but they have the ability, they believe, and I will not here officially say whether, because my players are not, let's say, not unified on whether or not this is legit, but they have the ability, they believe, to periodically bring Sanguinius back at times of great need
Oh my
using the Sangreal device.
goodness.
And so uh, my Blood Angels player gets very excited about this, and he does the things necessary to bring Sanguinius back. And so now I'm actually painting him a model right now. Um,
Ooh.
and so now his faction is being led by someone who is claiming and seems to have strong evidence to suggest that they are in fact Sanguinius returned.
Oh my goodness.
And this question has divided not just the factions, it has divided the players. And so now there's a large chaos army being led by a chaos space marine known as the Weeping Knight. There's a Tyranid invasion going on. There's some kind of unholy crusade involving orcs happening in the galactic northwest of the subsector. There's like 3 major credible threats that they all need to band together to deal with, if they're going to deal with them at all. But also the Imperial players are now in a civil war. Wow. So it's very exciting for me as a game master, and there's really fun sort of emergent storytelling happening as a result of all of this. And so,
but
yeah.
the thematic heart of all this is coming from the Horus Heresy, as it should.
Exactly. Yeah.
So let's pivot there. What's your experience of the Horus Heresy into it, and how much have you read?
Yeah. So I'm probably about 24, 25 books in. I am trying. I skip around just a little bit, but I generally try to sort of stay. So the Horus Heresy books, there's like all of the at the beginning of the heresy stuff, and then it kind of shifts to the aftermath of Istvan, the Istvan, the drop site massacre, and then it kind of shifts again from there to the and so I do sometimes skip around, but I try to stay in an era as I go, and it is my intent. I probably will not finish it this year, but it is my intent to do the whole Horus Heresy, like every book. I'm very much a completionist.
Single one. Wow. Okay. So
every single one. That's the plan. So some of them are not good. Let me just.
Yeah. Well, that's the thing. I'll never get through it. So I'm not a completionist, and my friend Evan has given me a
permission not to come. Yeah.
Yes, he's given me permission, but he's also given me a roadmap, and I'm gonna follow it because. Yeah, I don't have time for the bad stuff, especially since some of the writing is so strong. It's
well, you just gotta spend your Audible credits on something, and I also feel like if I listen to the bad stuff, and I only do these as audiobooks. I've only ever read maybe like one
there's
Warhammer
a sale
book
going on right
as
now.
a paperback.
I think it's still going until today. So
should get good to know.
Yeah, the entire series is on sale.
You're kidding me.
No, in June 6th it ends. It might actually be over. Like so, you better go right now and check because
we're checking it right now.
So as you check, I'm going to redirect a little bit so that we focus in on what I really wanted to talk about was the first 4 books and how and just kind of the theology of Warhammer, the world building of Warhammer Warhammer
they're on
40k
sale.
Especially.
Holy cow.
Still going, huh?
Yeah.
Okay, yeah. So
It's got 4 hours. It's got 4 hours left, and so I've got plenty of time. It's like $4 for a Warhammer book. Yeah.
Not happening. So, all right. So, where do we even start with this? Okay, so Warhammer 30k is different from Warhammer 40k because it's a completely worked out storyline that's already been done, right? While Warhammer 40k is kind of ongoing.
Yeah.
And
so the point of 40k is a little bit, and in recent editions they've started adding kind of more plot, but for the longest time the whole point is things have come to a place that they have stagnated to the degree that nothing will really ever change.
Which is necessary for the games, right?
Well, I mean, so if you think of it as originally
spoilers,
this,
by the way.
Yeah, if you think of it as like originally this is just like a framing device for we need to like make our toy soldiers fight. By the time you get to 40k, you can literally come up with a premise for why any one faction would fight any other faction, right? Everybody's,
But that being the case, what's really interesting is that I would have thought that you should be as vague as you possibly can in the 30k to 40k transition, so that because you don't need to come up with this elaborate and fully fledged out storyline to come up with the reality of 40k. 40k, like, as you said, it's and instead of that, what you have is Games Workshop, a committee, coming up with the most intricate, elaborate, and well thought out storyline, with just enough freedom given to each of the individual authors to come up with fully fledged worlds in each one of these books, where the story builds one to the other in ways that individual writers writing expansive fantasy and sci-fi series have trouble doing. And it doesn't make any sense because this is a story written by committee. So I'm flabbergasted by this, but do you have thoughts on how a committee of people who are, by the way, all, as far as I can tell, like hardline atheists, coming up with an extremely well thought out, theologically sound story about very bad?
So it's actually really interesting to hear you sort of come out with this outside perspective as somebody who's not a 40k guy. You're just somebody who likes sci-fi and you like books.
Yep.
And so you're just reading the books, because I know lots of kind of like grognards, like longtime gamers, right, who just hate Games Workshop with the burning passion of 1,000 suns.
Yeah.
And therefore, everything about the Horus Heresy is wrong. They shouldn't have done it this way. They shouldn't have written all these books. They should have left things vague, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So it's very interesting to hear you kind of say all of this. Okay, so Warhammer has the secret to its, let's say, success written into the story in a very meta kind of a way.
Yeah.
And so let me try to explain what I mean by this. The basic premise at the beginning of the Unification Wars, which, by the way, if I was working for Games Workshop writing stories, I would write stories about the Unification Wars on Terra, the things that happen before they start humanity starts reconquering the galaxy, because the little bit that we have is like the most crazy Gonzo Gene Wolfe, like, you know, Jack Vance dying Earth. Great. And it was like, I want to really tell those stories. And also, by the way, I want to buy those minis. Anyway, so the story that we get is that the Unification Wars are begun by the Emperor of Mankind, whoever he is, whatever his deal is.
We might talk about that because I'd like to hear.
We might talk. I mean, we will talk about it. Yeah. It's but his basic idea is religion is the thing that has ruined humanity. And if we can get rid of religion and bring in a the imperial
secularity,
an enlightened secularity, in which religion is proscribed, but also, you know, lots of different, you know, like let's say like gene science, except for the Emperor's gene science, is also proscribed, and you know, magic, except for the Emperor's magic, is also proscribed, et cetera, right? You know, this idea that we could bring about this enlightened secular thing in which one single absolute power would have
one source of
truth, would still have access, and it's it's where the truth is a deliberate lie. Like the truth, the imperial truth, is obviously false. It's manifestly false. The Emperor knows it's false. I won't tell you all the reasons we know this because you're 4 books in, but the Emperor knows it's false. And he's done this. But it's the idea of the sort of like the convenient lie, or the you know, this lie is what's going to save humanity, right? So that's the idea. So and so with this lie, and obviously with you know, his own, you know, gene soldiers, you know, everything else, the Space Marines and so on, the Emperor begins to conquer the galaxy and more or less succeeds. I mean, we're really given to believe that by the time he turns the crusade over to Horus, basically there's just some mopping up to do. And so it's like this big triumph of secular atheism. Except that the thing that Warhammer seems to understand really, really well is that worship is inevitable. And that if you make if you clear everything out with your secular atheism, the only thing that there's going to be left to worship is going to be the monsters. And so this is what
that's how it all starts.
happens.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
This is what happens, and this is how it all starts. The book that you absolutely should read next. I mean, I'm sure your buddy will have different, might have different ideas.
Reading Fulgrim right now.
Okay. Fulgrim, I mean, that one's quite good. You should read First Heretic.
That's on the list.
Yeah. There's definitely read that one.
But never mind.
You're gonna can't stand him so much worse by the time this is over. Yeah, there's literally a Reddit dedicated to just trashing Erebus. Every post is just about how awful he is.
Yep.
So yeah, but First Heretic
right?
is great. Yeah, it's about Lorgar. It's about the word bearers. Although the first heretic of the book is actually not, according to the author, it's actually not Lorgar. It's actually a different character.
Okay.
By the way, my Chaos Space Marines army is a word bearers army. I really love the word bearers. I think they've become like the best. First of all, like they're the only people they're the only faction who are basically right about everything. But also they're like, the best like mustache twirling villains by the end, and it's like if it's an opera, fine, it's opera.
Exactly. Well,
it's space opera. I want the bad guys to be as mustache twirling as possible. Yep. But anyway, so with all of this space made, the monsters come back.
Yep.
Right. And in sort of, it seems as though, and of course there's all different theories about this, maybe the Emperor planned the heresy all along, blah, 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 but it really seems as though, like, especially if you take the early series on its own, it seems as though the Emperor, in trying to, like, has brought about the very thing which he tried to prevent.
Yep.
By totally getting rid of traditional religion. Of course, that in the middle of all of this also, worship of the Emperor comes up, and it is not totally clear in what sense that's worship of the Emperor. Like, in what ways is it actually connected to the guy who's still running around being Emperor,
right,
as opposed to whatever power is showing up and doing these miracles. Like, it's little... Yeah, it's an interesting question, and it's a question that it's one of the main questions I think the whole series builds to. And then in the middle of all of this, so what I would say is that's the story inside of Warhammer, and whatever you want to say about, I mean, obviously some of the Horus Heresy novels are quite new. Death in the End didn't come out till like last year or the year before. But whatever else you want to say, like the Horus Heresy is the heart of the franchise. Functionally, even if your Warhammer back when you were playing, that wasn't the case. I mean, that's what it is now.
Yeah.
The Horus Heresy is the heart of the franchise, and certainly it deals with all of the major themes. And then within the Horus Heresy, as an overall series, you have sets of books that are focused on each one of the legions and each one of the other factions that are extant at the time. Yeah. Which basically shows these are the defining things that happened to them, which made them what they are 10,000 years later in the game, in the setting that you all know.
Yeah.
So the Horus Heresy is sort of the defining thing within the fiction. Outside of that, on kind of the metafictional level, you have this game being made by a bunch of atheists, right? But like so many products of English, British atheism, they could not get away from extremely traditional, sort of cartoonishly traditional images. And those images are really powerful.
Yeah.
I mean, there's something that happens on like a really visceral level when you see like a dark angel, it's like, okay, he's like a big dude in power armor, but he's got like monk's robes and sensors on his backpack, and he's carrying a sword. And like, there's something about that which is touching off all these other things, like all these other archetypes, all these other stories and images from that we're just all carrying around in our head as a result of being people who read stories and watch movies and things like this. And every single one of the factions is that. Every single one of the factions is, and a lot of it has to do, honestly, more with the design aesthetic than it does with the lore, especially the early lore, which is often quite, bonkers.
Yeah.
Sometimes delightfully so, sometimes just a little gross. But the design aesthetics are let's take a concept and let's extrovert it the most deliberately that we can. So even early on, there's this idea, I don't know if it's really true, But what people will say is, yeah, the Imperium is supposed to be a parody. It's supposed to be a parody of fascism and this thing and that thing and the other thing.
Yep.
But nobody who reads Warhammer novels would come away thinking that the Imperium is, you're just supposed to laugh at the whole thing, right?
No.
The Imperium is the tragic human condition.
Yeah, it's high Shakespearean historical tragedy.
Yeah.
What it is. No, it's
Yeah.
really funny. The point, because there's 2 points there that I want to tease out a little bit. The first is you made the point about this kind of that it was supposed to start out in the sort of Red Dwarf kind of mode
Mhm.
of British satirical sci-fi.
The magazine is literally called White Dwarf.
There you go. Right. And what's his name? The guy who runs the science fiction podcast, Damien Walter, makes that point. And he was a big Black Library reader in the early days. He's a big player and he's kind of really big in that space. He's huge fan. So he's made that point before. And we'll put a pin in that because I think that's interesting.
Yeah.
A lot of the stuff that he's doing is also inadvertently really intelligent, even as he's going full on Marxist in a lot of ways. The other thing is that the archetypes coming out, British atheism, and inadvertently being expressed in this really interesting way. I cannot repeat this enough. The instincts of Games Workshop or the writers or both in concert talking about these initial stories are so spot on. It's uncanny. It's uncanny how accurate they are in describing not just the human condition, because that stuff, that's not that hard to do. All you have to do is read a bit of Shakespeare and you're fine. You can do your or ancient Greek stuff and you've got your high tragedy models. But in terms of the awakening of the spiritual in the midst of the triumph of the secular, this sort of dark enchantment that we're all going through in real life, like they're predicting it, they're writing it in a way that is so true, capital T true, that it's uncanny. It's really uncanny. And it's so much better in terms of explaining the reality of how the ineffable and the transcendent works through the material than anything that Christians tend to churn out in massive amounts of dreck. I mean, talk about that a little bit. Okay, let's get a little specific. Let's get specific.
Yeah,
right? So
let's get specific.
We start off with characters, whether it's Loken in the first 3 books or Nathan Garrow. Those two.
Nathan Garrow's my boy, by the way.
Nathan. Okay, so let's talk
about. He's the
Nathan.
man.
Let's start with Nathan then. Okay, so the both of them starting off in this hardcore, like we have to be secular because this is the truth, and we're warned that any kind of corruption through belief is going to mess us up, and we see the proof of this because we come into contact with various people who have been subverted by worship, right? Ostensibly by worship. And what happens to Horus is also in the first trilogy is ostensibly on the surface a function of worship, not incorrect worship, at least according to that's how they see it. But Loken to a certain degree and Garrow much more are intrinsically open to the possibility that there is something going on that is deeper and more real than the imperial truth. The imperial truth being this artificially imposed secularity from above. And the awakening to it happens in these really interesting stages, right? First, because it's exactly the stages of the awakening of the individual to the presence of the divine in real life, right? It starts with some intimation of things being not quite how they seem, right? And usually it's because of contact with the demonic, which is how
with the demonic,
which is how often it happens in real life for real people. They have a very scary experience of something that defies explanation. It's usually dark and awful, and they have to fit it into the reality of their lived experience, and it's a very difficult thing for them. And okay, so Euphrates Keeler, right? She's one that kind of paves the way for this. She has the encounter with the demonic. She has this dark night of the soul, right? And she comes to the conclusion that there must be gods. But her first conclusion is incorrect. It's that there must be gods and we must make them. It's this Rainer Maria Rilke thing about
Yeah,
how
yeah.
humanity creates God out of its common sort of subconscious creative act.
Honestly, a weird just like a connection in the angry British atheist vein in that sense is Pratchett.
Yep.
Who is great, but this is basically kind of his whole big idea. One of his big ideas, is that the gods are sort of, is that the gods are made up. They're the result of the things that we believe, and sort of like if you get enough belief, then it, obviously Gaiman American Gods is the same kind of a thing.
That's exactly the thing. Yeah. So she initially
I just like I don't like Neil Gaiman, but I do like Terry Pratchett. So
we shouldn't even talk about him anymore.
Fair enough.
It's happened,
fair enough.
But he doesn't deserve any time. But the thing he does in American Gods is very interesting, and it's very intelligent, and it's what Euphrates Keeler comes up against until she has the actual. So she decides that she's going to worship the emperor, right, according to this kind of underground movement that's already moving towards that direction,
and which is around a book, the Lectitio Divinitatum, which was written by
Lorgar.
Okay, continue.
Yes. Guys, you cannot be here. Barbarian invasion. Look, barbarian. Hello, barbarian.
Hello, children.
Go, please. Close door. Let's go. No, you can't be here. Huns, Vandals, or Visigoths? Asked my son. What do you say, Father Seraphim? What do you say? Huns, Vandals, or Visigoths?
Is in what context are we asking?
It doesn't matter. Just you got to go with
it. Okay, Visigoths.
Okay, he agrees. All right, leave. Leave. Come on, go. Yes, but they were Aryans. You didn't know that part. Okay, go.
They were Aryans. That's right.
Даник, пожалуйста. Я не буду 3 раза говорить. Да, все, иди, а то я тебя накажу. Быстренько иди сюда. И закрой дверь за собой. Быстренько. Быстро. Спасибо. Я потом с тобой пообщаюсь, окей? Ты меня не слушаешься. Ай-яй-яй. Быстренько иди. Закрой дверь за собой, пожалуйста. So she starts to get into this thing, but it's not real. Initially Loken, he's kind of not okay with it, but he's he sees what's happening and he just wants to be true, etc. whatever. Then she's got this thing that happens where she's plunged literally into a dark night of the soul. She kind of dies, kind of has an existential death after with a demonic being. And once she comes out, she's different, and she becomes kind of this vessel for a power that flows through her. And there's no longer this kind of nonsense about we've made our own gods and we have to create this new thing with this new religion. It's just actual power, and it comes through a process of death and eucatastrophe, right? So this is very proper when it comes to the rhythm of story. And in the wake of her kind of transformation and acceptance of this strange and hidden deity that might be the emperor, might not, we have the first convert from among the Astartes,
right.
and that's Nathaniel Garrow, who has initially a healing that happens to him, and becomes open to the possibility, and continually encounters these near-death moments where he's pulled out or given extraordinary strength and power outside of himself through a kind of abandonment of self or an invocation of something higher. And he's given that strength, and he's able to come through it, and he becomes this kind of wandering Ronin type figure, right? Who can no longer be part of the central truth because
right,
because stuff hasn't happened yet. But at the end of the Flight of the Eisenstein, there's this, like I mentioned, this incredible scene of this soldier of the secular army and an artist also of the secular army who stand together and silently pray to this mysterious deity who is active clearly, and who does not act at all like the angry Sky Father that the angry new atheist Brits generally associate with the Christian God. So it's like these atheists are plotting out the story of spiritual awakening in
they're plotting out the thing that is actually happening right now.
Isn't that weird?
like that, you know, I was catching up a little bit on some episodes today of the surprising
Yeah,
rebirth of the
yeah.
belief in God or whatever that
Such a great,
Justin Briley. Yeah,
such
it's
a
great.
great. Yeah.
Of course, Father Andrew was on, which is great. But the I mean, like they plotted out like in the Horus in Horus Heresy, like they plotted that out, and it's weird because it then you have to ask the questions like, well, what do you actually do then with like the later Imperium,
Right.
and what do you do with the
Exactly.
later stuff?
Yep.
Where it's supposed to be like all the cynical stuff, and it's
Hmm.
just like an oppressive state church and fascism and all this different stuff. But then
Yeah.
even in the current novels that are set in like modern day 40k, like 41st century,
Yeah.
you know, where you have like these people like living saints running around, miracles, actually healing people, bringing people back, you know, like delivering whole planets, things like this. And so it's like, okay, well, something's going on here, and not even the people who are writing the fiction now actually believe their own propaganda. It's
It's not.
so interesting.
It's really weird. It's really weird.
It's so interesting. So,
So.
I mean, this leads to the big question, of
Mhm.
course,
Yep.
which
Who is
is
the
the
emperor?
emperor
Who's
the
the emperor?
Antichrist, or
Yes.
is he, yeah,
Yeah. Who is
or
he?
what's up?
Okay. So the I want to hear what you think, but so Sam Cooke uh, postulates that he's was created as part of a nephilic ritual. So he's basically a giant, and so everybody
Oh,
that
this is
comes.
where the Lord of Spiritsness of
Yes,
it is coming
yes,
in.
yes. And so all the Primarchs, etc., are essentially extensions of Genesis 6 and the kind of a nephilic reality, which I really do not like. I don't like that explanation in the least, because it doesn't really make sense in terms of how his intercession actually works, because it's not about esoteric knowledge. It's not about compelling the
Yeah,
power of a bound deity, which is how all those things work. It's all about
right.
knowing the magic words and using power and dominating others and blood rituals and sex rituals and all that. It's all that. There's none of that going on here at all, right? It's all about self-abandonment. It's all about prayer. It's all about invocation. It's all about like being in situations where you're about to lose and being you catastrophized out of situations. I mean, it's not that at
Right.
all, right? So okay, so I'll say something. I'm not gonna say who he is because I don't know. I haven't read enough, but
All right.
there's a very useful there's a useful story device that I've come up with for my own fiction, and I think that is echoed in Tolkien's Athrobeth, is that Tolkien wrote in a pre-incarnational paradigm where the world does not have the kind of grace that becomes possible with the coming uh, of God incarnate onto a material frame, right? So this world seems to be a kind of alternate, far future universe where Christianity never happened, where there is no incarnate deity, and that's a problem, right? But
I'm
the
about
way,
to make you really sad.
okay, please go.
Okay. So, I think this is in the book. It's a little collection of short stories called Tales of the Heresy, something like that.
Yeah.
It's in the, I mean, it's in within like the first 15. Yeah, Tales of Heresy. Dan Abnett, Mike Lee, Anthony Reynolds, etc. So
Collection of shorts, yeah.
it's a collection of shorts. They're all pretty. Most of them you could read in one setting, but it's like five or six. Um, one of them, and this is the one that I should have made you read before we had this conversation, is called The Last Church.
Okay, all right. Tell me about it.
And the premise of the story is the last Christian church on Terra, somewhere in Scotland.
Oh my gosh. Okay, so they're
The
that
last
specific.
Christian, yep. It's the last, I mean, it's very obviously the last Christian church on Terra. It doesn't call it a Christian church, but when they're arguing about religion, all the examples are drawn from Christianity. When they're talking about like the frescoes on the ceiling, it's like
Mhm.
Saint George and the Dragon, et
Okay.
cetera, et cetera. Right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So the premise is there's just one priest left,
Mm-hmm.
one Christian church left on Terra, and the emperor shows up to burn it down.
Yeah.
And he has come in person. All the Astartes are waiting, or the Thunder Warriors, whoever. Anyway, they're all waiting kind of on the outside. And he comes in and he introduces himself to, and of course, like the emperor one of the sort of the running bits with the emperor that you'll see in Horus Heresy is that nobody ever sees him for who he really is,
Yeah.
except for maybe Corvus at one point. But he sort of always, because he's such a powerful psyker, he's always showing the guys to people that they want him to see.
Yeah.
So he comes in and he's kind of cloaking his form in this way, and he introduces himself to the last priest on earth as Revelation. That's the name he gives himself, Revelation.
Okay.
And they sit down, and over the course of the story, you really have to read the story. They have a long argument about religion.
Mm-hmm.
And you have the emperor who is literally running through Reddit Fedora man's best arguments against religion. What about the Crusades? What about, I don't know, the Crusades? What about the Crusades? Right? Which is deeply ironic given what is about to happen.
I know.
Exactly. Because he's going on, all these people have been killed in the name of religion. All these people have been killed in the name of religion. Yeah. He's about to like wage a galaxy-wide genocide in the name of the imperial truth. But in any case, but he's going through all the sort of like the stupidest Reddit, tier atheist Fedora arguments.
Yeah.
And the priest is just kind of responding to them. And sometimes the priest's responses are a little unsatisfactory. But basically what happens at the end is the priest is, he's like, all right, we're going to burn the building down. You have to leave. And so the priest says, fine, whatever. And he walks out. And in that moment, he's able to see the emperor for who he really is, but also maybe the emperor as he's going to become, or something like, the God Emperor, or the emperor's divinity. Like he's able to see something like that.
Uh-huh.
And he smiles and he's like, no, you're wrong. And he goes back in and he's burned to death in his own church.
Interesting. Very interesting.
And that's this story. And by the way, there's implications in this, between this and one other book, there's implications. The emperor might have been St. George. The emperor might have been Jesus, blah, 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 etc. Right. So all of this stuff is like, it's one of these weird things where the story is set up sort of self-consciously to be like, religion has finally come to an end.
Yes.
Except
here it comes back.
Except that, this guy becomes a martyr, and also like his
unironically too. It's not like
unironically,
you're not supposed to laugh at the priest as he jumps.
So right, you're not meant to laugh at him. So anyway, this is a weird story.
Yeah.
And it's really hard to know what to make of this. I mean, obviously the 40k universe is happening in a universe in which you could say is probably a little perennialist, in the sense that Christianity is one religion among many.
Sure.
It's one of the many religions on Terra. It was the longest and most successful one, but it was one of many religions on Terra. But it's hinting to these greater cosmic truths that show up on other planets in other ways, right? So that's there's no way around that, I think.
Sure. Fair enough, but
I mean, it's a science fiction setting. It's not, the point of this is not, anyway. Yeah.
So who do you think he is? Without spoiling.
I mean, I don't think that anyone really knows.
Yes.
And when I say anyone, no. What I mean is, I don't think the writers know.
Yeah.
I really don't. I think that the initial thing that you would say is, well, he's the Antichrist. He's doing all the Antichrist things.
Right.
But then he ends up kind of, it's almost like there are two emperors.
Mm-hmm.
It's almost like there are two emperors. There's the guy that launches the Great Crusade.
Yep.
And then there's the guy that in the middle of all of that is showing up and performing miracles for his followers.
Yep.
While the other guy is while the emperor's servants are actively hunting said followers down. And that is, I will just be honest, I don't totally know what to make of this.
Yeah.
But it's really interesting. And I think again, to me, it's just the main theme of the heresy, but it's dealing out in a meta kind of a way where, I don't know, I was never in the writer's room, when they were planning all this stuff, but it seems very clear to me that even the writers, like the people who are in charge of developing the setting and writing books and publishing them and so on and so forth, that they can't get away from it.
Yeah, even though some of them are hardcore, are really like outspoken hardcore atheists who want nothing to do with that at all.
Yeah, they just can't get away from it.
So let me expand a little bit on my thought, and let's leave out the thing about parallel universes with reincarnational realities, and let's say this: the way that the intercession of the emperor seems to work, at least in the early chapters, is a lot similar to how it works in the Old Testament, as opposed to the New, right? So it's this kind of unexpected and oftentimes quiet, under kind of, like the still small voice after the wind.
Yeah.
Right. And that's a very smart decision on their parts if they decided consciously to do that, because for whatever reason, them choosing to go in this storytelling route, it makes a lot more sense if the way that the divine works in the story is like that, this kind of quiet, unexpected, underhanded influence, as opposed to the, again, angry sky above throwing thunderbolts and letting the demons do that sort of thing. Except that the demonic also works in a very intelligent way, because it always insinuates itself
very incipient. Yeah.
With like, it's always inside. It's always a series of thoughts, a series of ascents, a series of decisions that you have to make. It's not this kind of like suddenly you're possessed, like there's.
Yeah, it's funny because it's very obvious that the initial, so in the earlier Warhammer stuff that was a lot more intended, directly as parody of Christianity and so on, traditional European values and so on. They actually made like here's the imperial propaganda, like it was like a booklet, for like here's what they give the guardsmen on the front line, right? And it would have quotes in there like "Blessed is the mind that is too small for doubt," something like that. It's just like, aha, you silly religious people, and except that's being said in a context where demons are essentially like a mimetic virus.
Yeah.
And so just knowing they're there will open the door to fooling around with things that is going to cause you to then open the door more and give a little more of yourself each time, right?
Yeah.
And so in that sense, like having your skull is just too thick, like you don't care, like nothing the demons are offering you. That is the way.
Thing.
Like, yeah, it's a good thing.
Yeah.
And so it's just one of those. It's one of those like they're trying to make fun of. Oh, ha, these Christians believe that that demons can like trick you and tempt you and everything. Let's make a universe where demons are tricking and tempting people so they can see how dumb that is. And you come away from it looking like, no. I think
really
actually
works.
Having a certain simplicity of mind, a certain simplicity of life.
Yeah.
The discipline to say, there are certain thoughts which I will not entertain.
No matter what, right.
No matter what. Just certain thoughts that are not worth entertaining. Because no matter how strong I think I am not going to be strong enough to resist that eventually, because these are ancient cosmic intelligences and I'm just a small human, right?
And there's an interesting corollary to that, and that's how there's this built-in loyalty and strictness of thought to the Astartes that would seem to make them perfect.
Yes.
For this mind virus, and yet it's exactly that thing that makes them resistant to the heresy in a lot of cases.
Well, 50% resistant.
Yes, I'm talking about the ones that resist.
Yeah.
Because the ones that don't, it's always, I mean, it's operatic reasons.
Of course.
It's personal vendettas. It's
right.
Serious kind of.
I mean, that's actually the fun thing about the really good bad guys in Warhammer is that the really good bad guys in Warhammer are not all in on they're just like they have deluded themselves into thinking I can use this to get what I want. And they keep thinking that. They keep telling themselves, but I'm not really serving the chaos gods.
To that in a storytelling
of
sense.
course,
that's how people are.
but that's what I mean. It's so true to life. Like nobody thinks, nobody thinks, haha, I'm doing the works of the devil. I'm serving the devil. What they're thinking is, if I do these things, this will get me the power, the prestige, the revenge, etc., that I so desperately crave.
Yeah, and that's the kind of baseline level intelligence when it comes to human motivations and goals and stuff that works really well in the storytelling sense, but also is not
Yeah.
surprisingly reflected
Yeah.
in terms of spiritual truth.
Yeah.
What I think is really interesting is how, and you correct me if I'm wrong without telling me too much, but how the central point of the heresy, the thing that tips Horus over, is a demonic delusion in effect, and that because he's been like the whole thing that he sees, the future, well, both the past and the future that he sees in this manufactured dream world that Erebus creates for him, is all just close enough to the truth to be
Right.
true, but false, right? Demonstrably false. And somebody as close to the emperor as Horus should be able to just have the thought, this is probably fake, but it doesn't happen, right? And some people in the review sections of Google, of Goodreads, etc., note that and say this is not a good, this is basically a plot hole. And I tell you, no, this actually is very intelligent, because he, being the incarnation of the ambition of the emperor, with not just that, but also a fully fledged human plus person with a free will, this is the perfect way to capture him, is to
Of
create a
course.
delusion where ambition is the thing that is being taken away from him. It's absolutely
Yep.
brilliant, and it
Yep.
works. I mean, it reads, that whole section reads like something out of the Desert
When you
Fathers.
read, it does. When you read some of the ways some of the other fallen Primarchs are tempted. In particular, you'll get to read the Thousand Suns book, which I quite like. Really enjoyed that one.
I'm excited.
There's a saying out on the internet, like Magnus did nothing wrong, you know, but it's true. He was asked to do nothing and he did it wrong, and so that's my hot take on Magnus. But anyway, I quite like that book. Yeah, it is. I mean, this is another fun aspect of the story to me, is the way in which the each of the Primarchs is supposed to be like some aspect of the Emperor, and it's like clear that some of them like don't totally work.
Yeah.
Like, I don't know, like there are some Primarchs that are like so redundant with each other. I'm like, well, we're doing this because we just had to get up to 20. That's why we're doing this, right? Like some of these guys, I'm like, if the two of you were in a room, we wouldn't need one of you. But for the most part, I think it's pretty well done, and it's a very fun kind of it's a fun. I'm trying to remember which book this is in, but at some point, one of the Primarchs is making the point. It's like everyone looks at us like we're superhumans, but I still just have all the normal emotional problems of a human, but also I can, tear cities apart with my bare hands. Like, you think that's easy? Like,
Yep.
Yeah. So, and the ways that the different Primarchs are kind of forged in, usually, not always, but usually under pretty like horrific conditions.
Yep.
Anyway, I think all that's really interesting, and this is what gets to the heart of the way that picking a Warhammer faction is as reliable as the Enneagram, I would say. You take that however you want to take that.
Oh man, I'm sure some people watching this will be like, oh, he promoted an evil magical system.
I didn't say it was true. I just said this is as reliable. So if you don't think it's reliable, then anyway. But no, but as reliable as like the Myers-Briggs or the Enneagram
No.
or any
You
of these
said
things.
Enneagram, and that was right.
Okay, sure, right.
Do not retract.
I was today years old, by the way. Like literally earlier today was when I discovered that a lot of people are really wigged out by the Enneagram.
Yeah, I honestly I don't understand why, because I read a book that was written by by a Catholic priest and or as a Protestant maybe minister about the Enneagram, and
Yeah.
I don't know. It all seemed fairly
Well,
standard.
this person that I read today was citing that actually as a proof that traditional Catholics are super interested in the occult. But this is a different conversation. So anyway,
Yes, that could be an interesting conversation for a different time. And
it might be a different conversation. But
okay,
the
no, actually, hold on. Point
okay,
taken
all right.
though, because I just read Michael, what's his name's Warren Davis's apologetic piece on Substack about hyperpapalism, and there's really something about Catholics' worship of papal authority that is very interesting in the context of a religion.
You should send that to me. I mean, I mean, I'm whatever. I have Catholic friends and I'm happy for them and so on. But I did have somebody I did have somebody come into my parish recently wanting to sort of argue with me.
Oh yeah.
And just like
that'll
just like
yeah.
in the buffet line, at coffee hour, just be like,
as one does.
he was like, so why do you guys believe in birth control? Just like,
oh my gosh.
in the buffet line with children around,
Oh my goodness.
And I was like, well, that's my kid, and 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 that's my. What's your question? I don't like. What's your question? But anyway. So,
actually, this is a good place. This is a good place to wrap up for today. Because
okay, all right.
We can talk about this for ages.
I do have more to say about this. Oh, okay. So let me just finish my thought. Let me finish my thought real quick, which is the reason that walking into the Warhammer store, you're going to forget about this. The reason that walking into the Warhammer store and picking your first faction and just being like,
yes,
it's like the Enneagram. It's a personality test. The reason it works so well is because they have so successly extroverted every single one of the factions. And so sometimes this gets a little hard. Like if you were doing a Space Wolves book and you were doing a shot every time somebody said the word wolf, you would have alcohol poisoning and die by the second chapter. So like sometimes they go a little overboard with this.
Yes.
But the reason that it works so well is because, Lewis famously said, in fantasy, things wear their insides on their outsides.
Yes.
And that's what is going on with Warhammer. And so even when it like doesn't totally land, I mean, there's a bunch of stuff that's badly written and weirdly weird aesthetics and everything else. Like there's a ton of dross.
Yes.
But even when it's badly executed, there's still something about it that you can look at it and go like, oh yeah, that's my faction. And it's weird.
So it's not just that. This is also connected. I can see where that's true, and we're going to try it in October, everyone. So you'll see, for me at least, I will forget. But it's also true in the larger scale in terms of why 30K is so interesting and powerful, and why it continues to inform 40K so well. Is that it does the whole archetypal thing really powerfully, in the same way as I just had Michael Ward over a few days ago. I talked to him about Planet Narnia, and that was the point that he made, is that Narnia is successful not just because it's good children's literature or because it's apologetic, but because Lewis understood the sort of primal archetypal call that the human spirit has for an ordered heavens. And he put that into the substrate of the story. So there's something similar going on in 30.
We're about to do this book with my book club, actually.
Planet Narnia?
Yeah.
How about that?
Have you read that?
Yes, I'm about to read it a second time.
There's a surprise. I probably read it 2 or 3 times. There's a surprise Saint Silouan at the end.
I don't remember this.
Yeah, well, pay attention. Like you get the last chapter, and then like suddenly he starts talking about Saint Silouan. I was like, what? Yeah, just like random Russian holy man right at the end of this book on C.S. Lewis. So
how long are you guys reading it?
I don't know. We kind of go at our own pace. So we're doing an interview about, and then some excerpts from Olivier Clement's Transfiguring Time tonight. So we just finished Loris, which we took probably about. I mean, we always take a break for Lent, so we took a long break. So we just finished Loris, which was several people in the group. That was their first time reading it, and I think everybody's freaked out about time now.
Yeah.
And
Read
so
the Aviator in that case. It'd be even more fun.
oh, I've got a couple of people already on that.
Good.
But we're gonna read a little bit of, I don't know if you're familiar with Olivier Clement. He was in Paris the same time as Elder Sophrony, Saint Sophrony,
Oh, okay, okay.
all these other guys, and he was very close to Father now Saint Demetrius Aneloi. And anyway, so he was just like
Okay.
lived at this time
Yeah.
that he kind of knew everyone.
Cool.
And he's a Frenchman. He's a convert. He converted in his like 30s. But he wrote extensively about a bunch of different things. One of the things that he wrote a lot about is time. So he's got this book called Transfiguring Time, where he goes through, here's the ancient pagan mystery cult view of time.
Yeah.
Here's the modern Eastern religions, which he dallied with, as a lot of people did back then. Here's their views of time.
Yeah.
And then here's the modern West. And then here's Orthodoxy.
Does he talk about time as a helix?
He's probably got the best, you could say, like, technical explanation of it.
So because Velasquez tries to in one of his essays. I don't know if you guys read it.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, no, I've read that one, and I mean, I think that the time as a helix thing is best. I mean, it's best done in Loris, probably, of all of Velasquez's books.
Yes.
Certainly was something that I noticed this time, and I even made up myself a little chart, is that you can map the scenes in the first half of the book and then the scenes in the second half of the book. And of course, it's chiastic, which is no surprise, but it's more than chiastic. It's helical, because the story crosses over. You get the same scene kind of crossing over, but Vodolazkin's whole idea is that history doesn't repeat itself in the same way.
Right. I mean,
so there are repetitions, but those repetitions are being actually caught up into a higher life, into the life of Christ. And so you have each scene from Loris's, So you have each scene from Arseni's childhood is actually repeated, but now on the higher level as he gets closer and closer to Christ. It's so good. It's so good.
The naming, the three names are also connected with that.
Yes.
It's really smart.
Yeah. Oh, we talk about Loris all night, but I know you got other places to be. But I'm very happy.
With them?
So I don't know, like sometime later this year. Here's my crazy. Are you getting it here first, folks?
Okay. All right. This is two or three of these. Oh my goodness.
It is time for time, which is to say, I've decided this is the year that I'm going to explain medieval astrology to everyone.
Wow. Okay. So cool.
Yeah. And because it comes up in everything. It comes up in Dante, it comes up in Chaucer, it comes up in Narnia. The Bible, it comes up in Enochian literature, it comes up in Narnia, all this different stuff. And we talk about Lord of Spirits, like there's a lot to say, and it has not been said to my satisfaction. And so I've decided this is the year I'm going to explain astrology. It's really
funny because Michael Ward was talking about that in the Q&A section with us. But it's not going to make it into the official place.
That's fun. Yeah. So I'm going to explain medieval astrology to the normies. And the thing that got me on this is that I want to do Canterbury Tales with the group. But the Canterbury Tales has an astrological structure, much more explicitly so than Narnia does, actually. And if you don't know medieval astrology, then this will be apparent to you, but it's one of the main devices that Chaucer uses for the whole story. And so what I want to do is to explain that to people as we read. But I'm thinking that Planet Narnia would be probably a good introduction to some of kind of the basics for those people. But I'll be at Lord of Spirits conference in November of this year. And I'm going to be giving a talk on astrology, like what it actually is, not like your weird aunt's horoscope, but like what astrology actually was, which things that we now call astrology were proscribed by the church, and which things were considered to be like sort of reliable practice. And I will just say,
we're just part of the ether, kind of.
Yeah. I mean, I'll just say, like, as a little bit of a teaser, that the idea that a comet would predict the birth of a king, or that somebody born in a certain month of the year would tend to have a certain personality trait is not actually astrology. That is not the actual astrology that the church condemned. So I will be explaining all of this. So I've just decided this is the year.
People who are here, you've just gotten so much amazing stuff.
That's right. So I've just decided, I was like, this is the year. It's going to be weird. People are going to have to go along with it. And I'm going to have to literally every other word say, now, guys, I'm not saying you should blah, 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 blah. I'm
Well,
going to have to say that
you've done a lot
so
of
much
work.
this year.
You've done a lot of work in already. So I think most people have enough trust in you, and now that you have the black dress, it's gonna help.
Well, that's what I'm afraid is going to get me into trouble is people going to be like writing the Archbishop being like, if you heard Deacon Seraphim is, teaching astrology now and things like this, I'm going to have to be like, yes, Your Eminence, I was teaching astrology, but it's okay because here's what I was saying. And then because he's a very erudite man, he would be fine. But anyway, so we're gonna do it. We're just gonna do. I'm really excited about it. I have like a number of talks I'm giving different places, and some of them are like, like I'm speaking at Touchstone this year, and they asked me to come and speak on time and history and things like this.
Oh, cool, fun.
And so but this is like it's like a very normie audience, and so I have to like restrain myself and I'm talking to like evangelicals in their 50s and 60s. Right, so I've got to like restrain myself a little bit. But when I get to Lord of Spirits, I'm like, okay, you guys are asking for this. And so okay, I'll stop talking now. I know
are we doing Andor?
I haven't watched season 2 yet, but if you'll give me a few weeks, I would love to.
Oh no, Andor. We don't have to do it anytime soon. But I'm just gauging your interest in.
Yeah, I mean, I want to do Andor. I want to do more 40k. Yeah, okay, let's do it.
Because it's really
so good. Listen, in like September, this is also a huge secret, you guys. In September, there's a very real chance that my schedule will be freeing up significantly.
Oh, and I will be doing thing that you were talking about.
Yeah, and I'll be doing things like this more. So,
well, all right, we'll look for somewhere around there then. But you should watch it.
All right, it's really... Yeah, I'm excited to. I just haven't had time. Are we doing a Q&A? What's the schedule here? No,
we've gone on too long. So
yeah. Okay, sorry. I think the Atheist is starting in like 7 minutes, so I got to go inside and light some candles.
Yeah, you do that. Guys, thanks for coming. If you have Q&A, you can ask it. I'm going to post this in the Patreon, so you can ask them there. Record. I will forward the really juicy ones to Father Deacon Seraphim, and he at some point. So Jose, I'm dragging you back, kicking and screaming into Star Wars. So I'm going to do it as an intro to this series where I'm going to explain how Andor is actually the alpha and the omega of Star Wars. And Star Wars has died actually now.
I think that's right.
It has actually come to its end. And the only way there's a second coming, which I don't think Star Wars is capable of because it's not that deep. So Star
Wars has died. Doctor Who has been taken out behind the barn with a shotgun.
Shot in the face.
And shot in the face.
Did you see that? Did you see that stupid, idiotic end? I couldn't believe it.
I mean, I stopped watching in the middle of the Capaldi years, but I have kept up with the show. Anyway, okay. I'm sorry. We'll just go all night.
Yeah. No, if you don't know what we're talking about, everybody, just look up end of Doctor Who on if you have love for New Who, you're gonna laugh, and it's gonna be like tears of not joy.
Tears of pain.
Yes. All right.
Just tears, really. Yeah.
Just tears. Just tears. Thanks everyone for coming.
Bye, guys. Thanks for having me on, Father.
Always a pleasure. See you guys later. Bye.